very good.
Yes, it is I, your humble host, Bill Head the Third, coming to you live from the palatial studios of Bald Spots Productions here in the beautiful city of Irvine, California. Joining me over a more than acceptable safe social distance are my guests for this evening, motivational speaker and author Steve Borys and musician, composer, writer Darren Gordon-Smith. Welcome, gentlemen.
Welcome. Thanks so much.
Yes, thank you for having us.
No problem. It's definitely my pleasure. I've been excited about this one for a while now. Of course, Steve, you and I are connected on online already, so I've had a chance to look at your profile and whatnot, and I've seen Darren's movies. I finally watched The Second Age of Aquarius this afternoon.
Oh, good. I'm glad. You know, Bill, I've listened to your podcast. You always seem excited. So I guess it's exciting. You're always at a level 10. Now you're at a level 11, I think.
Well, I do my best. A lot of coffee has a lot to do with it.
Yeah, I hear you. I'm drinking it right now.
Highly caffeinated is the way to go.
That is correct, especially when you're on East Coast time trying to do a West Coast show. Because you're in Connecticut, right?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, it's 10 o'clock here, and it's almost past my bedtime, but this is well
Maybe
worth it.
that's what I
Well
should
worth
have called
extra.
the show. Almost past my bedtime. Well, darn it, I knew I'd forget to do something. I forgot to turn the phones off. Hold on a second while I do that. Well, so the show is intended to be kind of a roundtable type of discussion, and you'll get the opportunity, of course, to talk about your own stuff and the projects you want people to know about. But primarily, it's just an opportunity for people of vastly different backgrounds and avocations to discuss whatever happens to pop onto the screen. I've had some interesting conversations this way, but it's just a conversation between friends over coffee or beer, depending on the time of day you happen to be watching the show. And I'm not one to judge, so if you want to have a beer at 10 o'clock in the morning, well, beer was originally a breakfast drink anyway. So
Yeah, I think we got to bring that back. That'd be good.
I think so. That would, yes, and we should reintroduce children's strength beer. That was one of the reasons why the Mayflower stopped in New England, was because they were out of beer, including the children's beer. So they didn't have anything. They were dry.
Man, they were trying to make it all the way to Milwaukee, and they just couldn't make it, huh?
Pretty much. But yeah, that's. I don't know how interesting a conversation of pilgrim history would be, but.
Well, children's beer commercials featuring Captain Crunch, I think would be kind of interesting to talk about.
Yeah. Captain Crunchitize me.
Speaking of beer, has anybody been to William Shakespeare's house in Stratford upon Avon?
I have not.
Okay, well, I mean, it's beautiful, but it's like, I don't know, it's like sliding from one end of a ship to the other. Everything's all bowed and bizarrely. Then when I found out all the people the workmen drank was beer, and not because they didn't have clean water, right? It makes sense as to why nothing fit correctly and was straight.
Well, the ancient Egyptians were apparently always high, because they used a lot of different drugs for painkillers, and so the workmen on the pyramids would have been stoned out of their minds, and they seemed to handle it pretty well.
Oh yeah, we're always so overjoyed and self-fulfilled in their 1,000 years of building their will. But hey, they got drugs. That's cool.
Yeah. No, you can't beat that. And yeah,
The Egyptians also had help from the aliens. So.
that's right. That's right. That's right. And the oh shoot, now I can't remember what the stuff in the glass vial was called. And I rewatched.
Zydrate.
There we go. Maybe they had that.
That's in my movie Repo the Genetic Opera, where people are taking Zydrate for all things, any cure that they want.
The snake oil of 2056.
That's right.
Well, we'll get there soon enough.
Okay, good.
So, Steve, what is your book? Let's see if I can remember all the really how to beat Stalin, Hitler, and the South. Wait a minute. The Southern State Highway. Did I get it right?
Yeah. Yeah, Southern State Parkway.
Southern State Parkway.
That was very good. Yeah.
I love the title, by the way, Steve. That just cracked me up.
Yeah, that's we gave that title as a way, to catch somebody's eye, and be like, what the heck's this all about? What does two evil dictators have to do with a parkway on Long Island, New York? What the heck's going on there? And hopefully it'll get you to read the back cover and hopefully pick it up. But the whole book's about overcoming adversity and how to deal with problems, and our problems are all going to be different. For me personally, it was trying to overcome the passing of my father. He was killed on a wreck on the Southern State Parkway. But for others, it could be dealing with a divorce, losing a job, alcoholism, drug problem, or it could be like my Ukrainian grandmother, my babcha, it's the Ukrainian word for grandma. She had some different problems than me. She had the historic ones. She had to beat Stalin and Hitler. She was a victim first of, as a young girl, of Stalin's Holodomor, which was the Ukrainian genocide. And then later she lived through the Great Terror, which was another horrific purge. And then when they got back on their feet, her family, they were caught up in World War II. Hitler invades the Soviet Union in Hitler's Operation Barbarossa, where he invades the Soviet Union, and it's the largest land battle in the history of the world. And she's captured, her family's murdered, and she's made a slave for the rest of the war. And the book details how she overcame that adversity. Then gets into, and her story inspired me to overcome the death of both my father and eventually also my mother, and how to have a great life, or at least a good life, and be a decent person, and not let your problems overwhelm you. And I wrote it during the COVID, catastrophe that we just went through, when I saw a lot of people losing hope. A lot of people starting to turn on each other, especially when it comes to politics, right? Everybody's all of a sudden became a genius when it came to politics and economics, and we're just people who loved each other for decades were now at each other's throats. And it was a way to try to give people hope for a better tomorrow, and remind us, hey, we're all in this together, and most of us have a lot more in common than we don't. And the message ultimately is love, and trying to spread that, and trying to make a dent in some of the nonsense, problems that we all have to deal with on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, it kind of puts things into perspective when you're in a country that seems to be constantly battled by forces that don't really want it to exist, and apparently still don't. So
we're talking about Ukraine and not the United States, right?
At this point, that's what we're talking about. Yeah.
I'm just being facetious, but Steve, that's a really powerful story about your grandmother, especially. Did she tell you all this, while you were growing up? Did she tell you all her stories?
I got it secondhand through my mom. Uh, my father and my babcia actually died in the same car wreck when I was about 5. And my mom started telling me these stories when I was a middle schooler, and I was looking into the abyss. I was, suicidal. I was, being bullied. I had no hope. I was flunking out of school. I mean, my life was a mess. And she says, "Hey, you know what? You're not the only person in this family's ever had some trouble." I go, "Who are you talking about?" She said, "Let me tell you about your babcia Eva." I go, "What's so great about her?" And my mom was like, "She's basically a superhero." And I only knew her as a nice lady who made apple strudel. As a 5-year-old chubby kid, you only remember people by what pastry they bring to the house. That was like my thing. Hey, what the hell did she do? And then she starts getting into the story. And she'd tell me a little bit more every night. We both had insomnia. We'd always be up like now, late at night, chatting. So this is kind of reminiscent of my chats with my mom. And, she laid out the story. And my goodness, that gave me hope. Hey, if she could do it, my problems were real, sure. But if she could beat Stalin and Hitler, I can get off my butt and get back in the fight and try to figure out something myself, and that's what the whole thing's about. It's trying to give people hope.
Yeah.
But then also, the other part of the book is giving you a plan. How do you overcome? Because you get this motivational story. Yeah, well, great. That what do you do now? What give me a map, a roadmap? How do I get over that hump? How do I get back in the fight?
What do I do with my life now that I have it back?
Yeah.
With the writing, did you feel like you let out a lot of stuff and communicate that story to other people?
Yeah. It was you broke up a little there, but I think we're trying, like, it was kind of gut wrenching writing the book, and trying to relive all that stuff, and there's a whole lot more detail and trials and tribulations. I'm just giving you the 5-minute version here, but it's yeah, it was tough getting that story down on paper. It was, you had to take a lot of breaks. And go get some beer with the pilgrims from time to time to try to calm yourself.
Got to do whatever it takes to get through it, though.
Yeah.
And it is always a good story to hear about anybody done real who's done with this pandemic is actually made something out of it. Obviously good from many standpoints, but personal, you're not health wise. There's a number that I've done thought about doing that they wouldn't have time to think about, or they wouldn't have thought about. Of course, all this stuff about working from home. It's been one. I live in LA. I can tell you the traffic is a lot better than it used to be. So, let's say a few positive things about the pandemic.
Was a silver lining, so to say. Sure.
Yeah, for sure. A whole bunch of things have changed because of the pandemic. For me, I've started taking the show more seriously, and doing more guests. I've actually had a couple sponsored shows now, so I can call myself an actual professional podcaster. And
Congratulations. Well done.
yeah, but trying to figure out why Darren keeps breaking up there on when he's talking, but it's not. Whoops.
Can you hear me better now, guys?
Yeah, I hear you just fine. It every now and again it kind of breaks up a little bit, like there's an issue with the connection. So
I don't know.
I don't know. Need a new phone. Don't you have to buy the phone?
I know. Well, come on, man. I got it like 5 months ago, so I could lord over everybody that I had the new Apple 13. But of course, I'm like, that's only gonna last a few months where I can gloat because the 14 will be here, and I'll have people like you tell me I need a new phone.
Yep. Well, you can't.
Enjoy the
You
victory.
can't keep the. You can't keep the old rotary dial phone forever.
But you can write songs with those old beep things. Remember those song things where it was like beep beep beep
Oh yeah.
beep, and yeah, they even had like songbooks, and you could write. That just shows you there was too much time on our hands even back then.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm actually writing a screenplay right
Oh yeah.
now. Yeah, and it the second age of Aquarius, and my latest movie is about it's kind of a time travel thing with a 1960s dead rock star coming back to life now. But this one that I'm writing now, these people go back to the 1980s, and these are young folks who, I don't know if you've ever seen these people, like they dress like, even today, dress like flock of seagulls, and they're into everything 80s. And they thought everything was so rad back then until they actually find themselves back in the 80s. And I know as somebody who lived through it, it wasn't all that great. I mean, you had to actually think. Like there was no like when you're there was no like phone to look at. You actually have to think, have your own thoughts. And for these kids who go back in time in my movie, in my script rather, they are just terrified. Like every time they have to think and not have their phones, it's just like, it's this horrible hell of existentialism that they're in.
For sure. They've got
Yeah.
to find somewhere on an old paper map and fold that out and try to drive the car while looking at the map.
The old Thomas guide. I think I've still got one of those in the bottom of a drawer somewhere. But,
Wow. Well, and of course, you guys, I don't know, Steve, you're from New York, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I lived in New York during the 80s, and that wasn't a good, there was fun things then, but just in general, New York and all urban areas were just horrible, much worse than they are now.
Oh yeah.
yeah.
I mean, I was born in the Bronx, and we
Mm.
left, in the '70s because the Bronx was on fire. So that wasn't great.
It was on fire.
Yeah, about 70% of it burned to the ground. You
Wow.
know, it was just a combination of things, and Manhattan. That was before Giuliani kind of turned it into Disneyland, right,
Right.
and cleaned it all up. The urine in the subways and homeless people and crime, and it was a dark times. I remember Bernie Getz on the subway with the shooting and the whole. It was
Uh,
just some dark times.
Oh yeah. 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 I love the movie Escape from New York, and I think that was what people were expecting New York to become.
Oh yeah, yeah.
or like the Warriors.
Yeah, the Warriors.
That was
Remember the
great.
Warriors? Like he was
Warriors, come out and play.
man, yeah, I mean it is like people complain about now, but I have to say this in the time of life that I've lived on this planet, this is actually the best time to be alive, except for rents and mortgages.
Yeah, yeah,
Take that out of the equation. This is a good time.
yeah, yeah. I had a rental specialist on the show last week for a quick interview, one of the sponsored shows, and and we've talked about rents and mortgages in LA, and it's crazy how it's gotten to be. Median rent for one bedroom in Orange County is more than $2,000 right now. It's crazy out here, and it's even
Yeah,
more expensive when you get into LA.
and I, you know, about like, we can do a lot of our work remotely.
Mm-hmm.
Live just about anywhere. But the prices, I think, because people can't work remotely, prices in Montana, they're off the wall too. And maybe not as much as New York or LA, Cisco, but they're pretty damn close.
Well, you broke up pretty bad.
That's because I'm so broken up about this rent issue. No. Can you now? Sorry, I don't know what's going on.
That's okay.
I guess it's that shitty old Apple III that I've got.
Yeah.
iPhone. But and like everything is getting expensive.
Yeah.
Just about anywhere these days.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean,
and it's
can't believe how glad we are that that gasoline has dropped back under $6 a gallon.
Yeah. What the deal of a century? My God, it's like 505, and you're like kissing the ground, saying, "Oh, it's so cheap." But of course, I guess Steve, you're out in the East Coast. It's way cheap here, right?
Yeah, we were over 5 for a little bit. Now we're down to almost about 4.
Uh,
Yeah.
So we
wow.
got a deal, but we got murdered also with the real estate.
Yeah.
You know, we owned a home for a long time, and then we started renting around 2019, just trying to take a step back. And we were loving it. It was a great deal, you know. And then the pandemic hit, and they raised the rent about 50%.
50%? Jeez.
Wow.
And kind of looking at the guy like, you're profiting off the death of hundreds of thousands of people here, and it was kind of extortion. But then we were like, heck with this, and we went to buy a house. And homes that were in our price range, we'd overbid. The house wasn't worth what it was listed, and we were overbidding that, and we'd still lose that by $100,000.
Wow. That's crazy.
And we were fortunate. Thank God we got a great place now. But we were finding out there was a lot of folks from the city, New York City. We live in about an hour north of the city. Folks were just fleeing the city. They were well off, and they were just out overbidding. They were just making up preposterous bids just to get out.
Crazy.
That just drove the price. Then there were also some hedge funds and other private equities that were just buying up, middle class housing just as a new investment tool, pricing regular folks out of the market completely.
And the absurdity of the whole situation is, well, it's true that we should be providing more housing. No argument there. But the population has not increased in line in the same way that the price for housing has increased.
Yeah.
Here in California, if you bought a home in the 70s, that home should be worth about, median price would be 267,000. Now, median price in California is somewhere around $750,000. And the population of California has not tripled during that time. So we have more vacant places than we have more people rather than we have homeless people. So
Right.
that tell you that we're not going to build our way out of this. We got to have some sort of government so that we don't things being bought by by Airbnbs or what, because it's just killing things.
You definitely hit on something there. It's word people don't want to even realize that to the root of all this problem is monopoly.
Yeah.
Is that the monopoly is the opposite of capitalism.
Mm-hmm.
Capitalism's great, it's competition and make your own business and your own choices. but the end game of capitalism is monopoly.
Yeah.
And that's where you have or cartel behavior. You just have a few people controlling everything. And then every time you try to challenge them, they call you a commie, a communist, you hate America. And no, I love America. I love capitalism. It's what you're doing is cartel behavior. It's the exact opposite of what we want America to be, where we're free and independent, and but it kind of people don't understand that, and they kind of get fooled by some propaganda about the whole situation.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, you can't have capitalism or free market without some sort of laws and regulations. It's like you can't play football without rules.
Right.
If it's just lawlessness, that create, doesn't create a bunch of little entrepreneurs. It just creates oligarchy and monopoly, like you're saying.
Yeah, and we have to make sure that the laws are set up in such a way that everyone has the equal opportunity to succeed.
Yeah.
And the way a lot of things are set up, I mean, we definitely saw what happens when one of the oligarchs is given the reins of power, and we saw a lot more power going to the wealthy, and
Yeah.
and opportunities being squashed for those who are not so wealthy, just because it's like, hey, we're gonna take up all the opportunities for ourselves, and we need to.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying that that the other party would do any better, but we definitely need to make sure that the opportunity is equal between people.
I agree. And I mean, right, new party's gonna have a solution, but one party in the 20%, the other party is not. So the Democratic Party is pretty free and not ahead, but but they're with the curve of where society changes. It seems to me the Republicans, in terms of their social war, they lose every time. And then they change the goalposts. So it's like, okay, not against gay marriage now, but it's transsexuals. So they're always going to find something that they say, I don't want to change.
Right.
And then they do, and they lose because they got to live in the 20th century too. But this idea of kicking and screaming towards any amount of progress or equity, I think is a real problem.
And that's some great points you made there. I agree. And a lot of the politics, like the culture wars. I'm not saying a lot of these cultural issues aren't important, but they become a distraction, and to distract you from the economic issues. When they say it's liberal media, well, it's corporate media, and we get some channels taking a conservative. Nobody's ever taking that's where they all unite and say, well, it goes back to the Reagan Revolution and supply side economics and trickle down. That was kind of brought on 70s where the billionaires just revolted. And they said, we're not going to pay taxes anymore. And the corporate, it's Milton Friedman where they said shareholder value is primary, and anything else we don't care about. And you're a filmmaker, you must remember Wall Street and Gordon Gekko and all that, right?
Oh yeah, sport.
Yeah.
I love how you call people sport and champ. Yeah, it's like sport. If you start saying things like, hey, I want a quality of opportunity, not a quality of outcome, but just opportunity, you're labeled as a communist. It's like, go back to wherever you came from. That's not to problems. Things are just going to get worse. And unfortunately, I've read, you guys have read any science fiction, by Octavia Butler. Uh, Wonderful writer was preaching about looking at the Trump, a Trump type character 20 years ago when she wrote one of her books. She was basically saying the worse off that things get, the more people will get more conservative, regardless of whether conservatives are in power, because hate just makes more hate, anger just makes more anger. It takes a whole lot of bad stuff going on for an actual revolution to occur. But in the meantime, as things get more conservative, they just get more and more hateful. And that's now talking about arming, kindergartners with guns in the schools because we don't want to actually deal with that problem.
Now, it's Trump. Trump's a very interesting phenomenon. Like, supply side economics. It's Reagan. My interesting point about Reagan was his favorite president was Calvin Coolidge. Out of all presidents to pick, Reagan loved Coolidge. And Coolidge was famous for doing nothing.
Yeah.
Business of America is business, and best government governs least. And he had a prosperous 4 years, or more longer than that. He took over Harding after he passed. But he handed off to Herbert Hoover, and 15 minutes later, it's Great Depression. So I'm a historian, and so what led? Why supply side economics of the 20s led to the great capitalism dying.
Yeah.
And then what did Reagan do? He said, well, we got to dismantle the New Deal, which was the answer to try to revive America, and there's a whole lot more detail there. But the 80s was dismantling the New Deal, and then you got Clinton, and he dismantled it even more.
Yeah.
He did NAFTA, and he opened up China. And I always was laughing. I was a high schooler, and I could never figure out how, if we sent all the jobs to China, how that would make our country better. And if we sent all the jobs to Mexico, how that would make workers, and so all the jobs went abroad, and people knew they were getting screwed. They knew the Democrats and Republicans were screwing them. And then capitalism died again in 2008. We were dead again. It was Great Depression Part 2. Then that leads you to Obama, right? And these open change, and everybody thought Obama just did more. He bailed out the banks. I got crushed. Me and my family were crushed by what happened in 2008. And we got no help. There was no New Deal. And then people who got frustrated with that, and then they turned to Trump.
Yeah.
And it's very telling. You'll get people who voted for Obama twice, then they voted for Bernie in the primary, and when he failed, then they voted for Trump. And that tells you people know. Now, of course, Trump's a whole thing. That's they ask, is he a man or a con man? So he might say, I'm here to save America and save the working class people. Is he a man or a con man? Is it, and then when he got into office, tax cuts, it was more supply side economics. Americans are still looking for Franklin Roosevelt's New Deal, right? We haven't got it, but we have a lot of hatred and division. We got a lot of people blaming each other. And I'm a teacher. I went out to a bar the other night, people screaming, teachers are indoctrinating, they're making everybody gay and critical race theory. I go, no, we're not. Like when I first heard critical race theory, I'm like, oh my God, am I teaching? I never heard that word before.
Yeah.
I'm like, what's that?
Yeah, I'm
I
still
go, oh my
trying
God,
to
maybe
figure out what it is.
I had to look it up, and I'm like, oh no, I'm not teaching that. I'm teaching. Slavery was bad. I teach that.
Yeah.
And Dr. King was great. And he did some great.
Those are some easy ones to call.
Just as a history, I'm teaching you the facts. Okay, this happened, and then now you can interpret that however you wish. But just the amount of misinformation and disinformation. Misinformation. Okay, you get a fact wrong. Okay, that happened. And then you apologize for that. You have a retraction. But this information is where you're just lying, where you're just making stuff up on purpose for your own personal gain.
The difference
And you
is
double.
good, Darren?
Well, yeah, I agree. And you double down with the disinformation, think later somebody will buy. But I do think you hit the nail on the head about, I hadn't really thought about it that, but about people using these culture war wokeness and all this other stuff just to make the 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 economic inequality and all the problems with supply side economics um, just being occupied by these stupid, fights over who can hate wokeness the most.
And I get hit as a teacher. I get hit from every angle. Completely. I'm obviously a white man, a straight white man with a family, and I had I've always been leaning center left. I would say I'm a New Deal liberal, like I believe in workers' rights. And let's not poison the water and crazy things like that. But also open to conservative ideas and change my mind and let's hear every side of an issue. And one kid accused me of racism. Oh my God, what did I say? So no, you didn't say anything. It's just that you're a straight white man, so therefore you're racist.
Yeah.
So when you get that, you're like, oh my God, where do I go? Where's my home?
Yeah.
And it's just by the color of my skin and my gender, people you're racist. You can't do this. You're terrible. What can I do?
Yeah. And it's the natural ally. It's to make fun of white liberal wokeness, but you make fun of them, fight back. But so against actual redness, racist, they will fight back. And so why don't you stay back for those folks and not the people that are somewhere in the middle?
And what one of my missions with the book and everything is we need liberals and conservatives. One, it's not good or bad. One thing I always teach with the kids, I always show them like the Cuyahoga River on fire back in the 70s. And I say, well, should there be a law against this? Lighting rivers on fire. When I'm talking, water is on fire.
Yeah.
Probably too, and they would say, of course there should be a law. Well, conservative would say, well, let's look at that law. Is that law going to cost too much? Is it going to put me out of business? Is it going to raise taxes? Let's think it through. Is that an evil person? Of course not. It's just about people with different interests voicing their opinion.
Yeah.
And then through conversation, research, compromise, we get to an acceptable solution. That's when America's at its greatest, is when a liberal and a conservative can sit, talk, argue, maybe get passionate about it, and that's okay. Then figure out a way to move forward.
Yeah.
And now it's like, oh, if the opposite party wins, they're a demon from hell, and they're not only raping children, but they're eating them now.
Yes.
And so now it becomes an existential crisis that if your opponent loses, it's you welcomed in a demon. And then now if you're serving in Congress next to the demon, how can you possibly work with that person? Years ago, Biden and McCain, they would fight all day in the Senate, liberal and conservative. Then they go dancing and drinking with their wives.
Yeah.
Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Scalia, there's a picture of them riding an elephant, for God's sake. They couldn't be, because they were human beings and they loved each other. And it's okay to argue and have different views. And once we start demonizing the other and calling them this is what Hitler and both Stalin did. And this is the other part of the book. Is when you start, I used to like to use the word vermin back then.
Okay.
Because once I make my opponent vermin or insect or a rat or something, that's okay to exterminate them, right? You don't think
Dehumanize.
twice. If there's a house, anybody, even the most kindest person, we got ants, get the exterminator. Um, so anytime you hear somebody starting to call their opponents inhuman and vermin, that's what a warning's got to go up. And extreme left and extreme right do it.
Well,
My victim of both.
In that sense, it's kind of a form of racism, because a lot of racism has to do with dehumanizing the other, whatever that may
Yes.
be. And while politics doesn't change the color of your skin, it definitely seems to change the color of your personality. And dehumanizing your opponent, whomever they may be, is gives you permission to exterminate them, like you said. It's crazy.
Yeah,
And
it is. And bring things back around to the poser.
Well, we completely lost your sound there for a second, Darren.
Yeah, thanks. Well, I mean, and it's always a great thing with creativity. How can you tell good stories but bring in political concerns? And I don't just mean like politics, like the Senate or the House, but I mean cultural changes. How do you comment on things in an art form without getting preachy and sounding like you're on some soapbox on Hyde Park or something? I think that's to me is like a sweet spot between having characters that you like and a plot that you can really get into, and kind of an as a side, you made a world that can kind of comment about the real world. And it's funny you touched on that, because in Repo the Genetic Opera, my film, we had this thing where we were lambasting plastic surgery, and that, so that the idea was that people could buy their body organs on credit, and they'd have designer hearts and designer livers, but they could also change their race at will. They could change anything that was superficial to them. But of course, then it goes to a question. I mean, can you really change who you basically are? And as with the main character of Paul Sorvino, playing this evil guy with evil rich guy with 3 really stupid children, also appreciate Trump, but anyway, but have him play that, you get you really get through, and I'm hoping in a entertaining way.
Yeah.
This idea of like, what does it mean to be an individual? What does it mean to be a person when, so much of those things can change already and will change so much in the next 50 years. So, and in my other movie, The Second Age of Aquarius, which is out right now, the dead rock star from the 60s comes back to our present day. And so I do all sorts of comments about, what it was like back then versus now. And he asked a specific question to the girl in 2022. He's like, I need some enlightenment. What do people do for enlightenment these days? And her answer is like, I don't know. I guess we just go out and work hard and shop.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of true. You read so much about the 60s, people searching for enlightenment. I think there's that many people these days who are kind of searching in that way. Maybe not this, but I think people are much more materialistic than they were back then.
That's a great point you made, and that was Bush's solution for 9/11: go out and shop.
Yeah.
Don't let the terrorists win. Buy something.
Yeah. And when you think about the solution for World War II was, we're going to tax you at 90%, and you're going to get drafted into the army, and we're all in this together, and and the country was really united as one. Where the answer to our problems right now is be you, do your own thing, and also believe whatever the hell you want to believe. And that was another thing that came out of the '60s, where you could kind of were now free to believe whatever you wanted, and you had your own set of facts, and people just started capitalizing on that. And that's fine if you're doing your own existential meditation and you want to be a Buddhist or this or that, but then it got into the politics, and now you can kind of believe whatever the hell you want.
Yeah.
And but we've always had that strain in us. It goes back to bringing up the Pilgrims and everything like that. Like with Massachusetts, they had their belief that predestination, that God already picked who's going to heaven and hell. You didn't know, and what you did didn't matter. So there you go. So that's a very strange religious belief, that your actions will matter, and you had to buy that. Somebody obviously made that up, and you had to buy that. Otherwise, you couldn't kick that. Anne Hutchinson, a woman, she started preaching, which was a no-no. But then she said, no, I know I have a magical power. I know who's going to heaven and hell, that she somehow could divine. And so she got booted out of the colony because of her made-up belief. But she believed, so it was one belief versus another, just based on no fact or evidence. And, that's kind of always, and that's when you see that right now, right?
Yeah.
It's my opinion. Well, what's that based on? And it's just, well, that's how I feel. Great. Is that real? Is that healthy? Is that positive? And you see it on a lot of different things, on right and left. People just want to believe what they want, but where's the facts? Who the hell was it? Tip O'Neill, I believe, I might be wrong, said, you're entitled to your own opinion, but you're not entitled to your own facts. And I think it would be healthy to get back to that.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. No, that's good stuff. Yeah, people aren't, especially when it comes to politics, seem to be unconcerned with the actual facts. Getting to the facts, they confuse their truth with facts.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole idea of of these investigations. You got the search of Mar-a-Lago that went on, and then you've got Giuliani showing up in court, when whatever, or not in court, but in front of the grand jury, for whatever it is he told them. If we ever find out the truth of that, that'll be interesting. If he goes on a talk show and reveals the truth about what happened in the in the grand jury, because that's supposed to be a secret meeting, and so basically he's the only one who can tell what happened in the room. But it'll be interesting to hear what he has to say about it. And then what's his name? It's Trump's CFO pleading guilty. Yeah, we're back to what's going on inside of people as opposed to what's going on outside of people. The whole back to Repo, the whole Amber Sweet situation. It's like she can change her name, she can change her face, but her character remains the same throughout the movie. And it's like, are we that? Are we trying to change the appearance of our character as opposed to changing what's actually going on inside?
I agree. And are we for something or against something just based on what the other side's for and against?
Right.
I mean, other thing, like we take these extreme positions. It's like Republicans say no, so we got to say yes, or vice versa. I mean, that makes absolutely zero sense.
Yeah, and there's definitely been times. I'm trying to remember what the one was recently, but There have been plenty of times when one side of the aisle says, no, we're not going to have that because it was your idea. But if you look
Yeah.
back, it was actually their idea before.
Yeah.
Now it's like, no, the inhuman opponent, the dehumanized other, is now responsible for it. So we can't have it.
Right. That's what
And
Romney care. That's why it's called Obamacare and not Romney care.
Yeah,
Because Romney disowned it.
right.
it's just, and it's just shows that so many people are in pain right now. Uh, they're really hurting. They know instinctively that the system doesn't work for them, and that's why Trump attracted so many followers. He had a commercial right before the election where he correctly said, Democrats, politicians don't care about you. The system's rigged, which he's correct. And he goes, and I'm here to fight for you, and I'm here to fix it. And of course that's the question mark. Was
Yeah.
he actually there to help you? Could he? And did he actually know how to help you, or was he, this shady cat? He was lost lawsuits right before he was elected for running a fake school and
Yeah.
running a fake charity.
Yeah.
And then everybody overlooked that, and he won it and became president. Forget about the other stuff, but that just tells you how much pain people were in.
Yeah.
They finally had a champion who was saying all the right, and who was saying and they said, yes, you're right, Trump. The Democrats and Republicans don't care about me. He's right. They weren't, the Democrats, when supply side economics was happening, and the poor workers and the poor factory guys and the farmers was, hey, Democrats, help me. They would just look at them and say, well, you should have went to MIT and been an engineer.
Yeah.
What the hell did you become a farmer for? That's stupid. I said, but you're supposed to help me. You're supposed to fight for me. Like, well, why don't you go to college? We all kind of de-emphasize manual work and being a worker and building stuff. That become, oh, you want to become a grease monkey? What the hell's wrong with you? You got to go. And so, but that was the old Democrat base. They kicked them out and they said, well, we got to take money from Silicon Valley. Why don't you start an internet company? High school ex factory worker with a high school diploma. Why don't you start your own tech? What are you talking about? That's not everybody can do that. And there was no party really representing this whole class of middle class and lower middle class workers. And Trump was very exciting. Let's give this guy a shot. And then, you got to make up your mind for yourself. Was he that guy, or was he, not what he said he was going to be? And that's always the $1 million question, and you put facts in front of people. Do they want to believe it, or do they just want to see their version of it? Because it's compelling. So here's this billionaire. He came down from his golden tower to rescue you. He gave up this billion. That's a hell of a story. But is that the real story?
Then you've got confirmation bias to fight against with all that, because people want to believe what they want to believe, and even if you come up with the facts that oppose that belief, you have to overcome this bias that people have naturally that allows us to ignore things that are in opposition to our core beliefs. If I believe A and you come up and say B, well, I'm going to ignore B because B doesn't agree with A in whatever portions it doesn't agree with A, and say no, A is right, even though B is completely right. I'm going to believe this just because my brain is wired that way.
And the more facts you give a person, to me, anybody, I suppose, but the more facts you give them, the more people want to dig in the opposite side and say, those facts are just biased, or
Right.
believe that. I don't believe 98% of climate scientists saying such and such. I think I know a little bit more because I've studied on the internet during the pandemic. You know, I think also, talking about where Trump was successful in courting all the disaffected people, I think he hit all the buttons right, as Steve said. But I think the problem is too many people are using complaining with actually having solutions. I mean, honestly, any idiot could read some papers and know what the problem with politics today are. Anybody can talk about what the problems of the economics in the city are. We don't know it. But just by saying and reciting all that, like Trump did, that's not a solution. You have to have a solution. And so just say somebody say, oh, well, this guy's talking my truth. This guy talks like me. This guy's got this. Well, that's fine, except you don't have a solution.
Right.
And so that doesn't help. Whining about problems does not solve them. And, I say it, we get the politicians that we deserve. We don't
The
care about
slogan, yeah,
politics, and we want to give money. Say that political speech is equal to money. Money is equal to free speech, as the Supreme Court has made. Then it just goes to show you: you have more money, you have more free speech. You got less money, you got less free speech. But the bottom line, you got to be as a senator, congressman, every single day. You got to be raising money for your next election. So of course, you're not going to care about what regular people think. You're going to care about what your donors.
Right. Well, that's true
right.
at any level of government. Those who are the most well funded and the most organized are the ones who get their problems solved.
Mm-hmm.
If I get a bunch of people together to to get rid of the pothole that's in the middle of my street, and we have money and we have people together, and I go to the city council and say, look at my people, look at my money, fix my pothole, they're going to fix my pothole. But if I'm a single mother with a disabled child who can't get a proper IEP so that they can get educated, at least some form of education, however good or bad the local education system may be, I have an uphill battle against it, even though what I need is right. And
Yeah.
it's terrible.
Well,
But that's
and
the nature of the thing.
yeah.
And what you see is what people want. If you put up a bill and say 98% of the population wants it, but 2% don't,
Mm-hmm.
guess who's going to win that fight?
If 2%'s got
Yeah.
the money.
Yeah.
And we are in the midst of an oligarchy. And that's why people had such a negative reaction to Hillary, when she was up and why she lost, is because people said, well, you were in Washington when a lot of this supply side economics was being built.
Yep.
And Bill Clinton signed the Financial Services Modernization Act, which led to the too big to fail banks that killed us all. That's Clinton's, Bush Jr. was the worst president ever. Let's just get that off the table. He was, and who voted for these wars? Well, Clinton and voted for it. Biden voted for it. Joe Biden's fingerprints are all over this.
Yeah.
So if you're a disaffected worker, Joe Biden fingerprints all over. Crime bill, Patriot Act, that's Biden, and a lot of stuff. So when people look at Biden and Clinton, they say, "What the hell are you talking about? How is it? It's just more of the same," and they're right.
Mm-hmm.
But then you look at Trump and you're like, "Oh my God, how are these the choices of all the 300 million people we got in this country? These are the choices,
Well,
and it's disheartening."
well, people like the same. I mean, that's why we have so many sequels in movies. People aren't looking for the second age of Aquarius. They're looking for Repo the Genetic Opera Part 2.
Yeah. That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
So we say we want change, but change is scary.
Mm-hmm.
There's no doubt about that. And I also think, what Steve said a while ago is absolutely right on point about the Democratic Party, under Truman and Roosevelt was pretty much the party of the workers, the have-not versus the haves. And then once it became the party of highly educated people, then it became snobby. It's like, yeah, well, these parents are not happy if their kids become firemen. They want them to go get an MBA from Harvard. Um, but I think, at least among my son's 22 and his friends, I think things are starting to change. Some of them are becoming firemen. They decided, they went to college, or some of them don't, but they don't see anything wrong with making a choice like working in a supermarket or something like that versus having some dumbass Wall Street job. I think things are, at least hopefully, will get that knobbiness out of the liberal politics and out of the Democratic Party, because otherwise there's no way they can prevail.
Yeah. I mean, really what we need is people who care more about people than about ideology.
Yeah.
We need those politicians back who went out and actually did more than just shake a couple hands, or now I guess it would be fist bumps, uh, that actually researched and found out what the people really needed. Um, Teddy Roosevelt comes to mind, and the creation of the USDA, and the Clean Foods Act and all that kind of stuff that actually helped people on the street. And in spite of the fact that he was one of the wealthy few. Um, I like Teddy Roosevelt. I mean, not too many guys would keep on talking after getting shot.
The great bull moose.
Yeah.
And then he finished that speech with, "We stand at the gates of Armageddon and we battle for the Lord."
Yep.
That's my favorite ending to a speech. But, like you talk about like standing and fighting for what people want. I remember the Democratic primary, and, it's Liz Warren and Buttigieg and Biden are all on the stage. And somebody asked them a question. They said, "Would you support funding for transgender surgery for incarcerated people?" And it's just, how is that a question? And of course, they all raise their hand. But this is a question, an issue that relates to what percentage of the population, and it's like they're talking about that and arguing. And of course, that's just fodder for conservatives to go after. And you want money for transgender prisoners to who's does that make my life better? Does that make any? It's just it's a cultural war issue.
Yeah.
That I can't really wrap my head. And believe me, I'm all for rights and civil rights and the whole thing, and I don't want to have anybody be hurt. Right? But it's just such a tiny cultural war issue that I can't even get my head around. And now we have to argue about this, and it's like, well, I have to have a position on that. Like, how is that? I'm trying to feed my kids.
Right.
I'm trying to take care of my. I'm trying to do my job, and you just get some of these issues that you can't even wrap your head around. And by the way, China's grown big and strong.
Yeah.
And while we're arguing and tearing each other to pieces, they haven't been in a war in about 100 years. And they're building the Silk Road 2 initiative, where they're just all roads are literally leading to China now, and they're just taking over Africa. And the Chinese workers don't want to work anymore. They want to be like us, right? They want to be the white collar. And so they're building all the factories in Africa, and all the supply chain is going to flow. We're not even talking about this. Meanwhile, I'm trying to drive down the street and the potholes, I'm falling in the pothole. And finally they passed an infrastructure bill. But while we're killing each other and worrying about what was taken out of Mar-a-Lago and this transgender and this stuff, and I'm not saying that stuff's not important. What is the rest of the world doing?
Yeah.
And if we're not united, if we don't remember, hey, okay to disagree, but we We all want to have a good family. We all want to have equal opportunity. We all want to, do these things. When we fall asleep on China, we're going to pay a very dear price.
Mhm.
Oh yeah, for sure. And let's I know Maslow isn't exactly in favor anymore, but we do need to have some kind of hierarchy of needs here, and that like feeding children should be really high on that hierarchy. The basic essentials, should be pretty high on there. It's like feeding kids, or food security in general, roof over your head, um, clothes on your back, those kinds of things, and things like whether an incarcerated criminal should be able to get their transgender surgery done while in prison should be pretty low on that list. And you're right. I mean, it's like, hey, if somebody feels this way and wants to do that, then that it's their life. They should have the ability to do that. But it's really not that important to me, because there are children who don't get breakfast in the morning down the street in what is, one of the, I guess we can't exactly say the wealthiest nation in the world anymore, but certainly one of them. And if you go out in LA, it doesn't take long, driving around in LA before you find a tent city. And it's like, this is the United States of America, and we have tent cities.
Right.
And that's being generous in what I call them. Because they're not all tents, but we have them here in the OC as well. But yeah, it's just crazy what what time is spent on, what we spend our time on, and yeah, do we go after the needs of the 3%, or do we go after the needs of the 90%? Do we make
Right.
sure that the minorities get access? And I mean minority in any sense of the word, whether
Yes.
that's a skin color issue, or a practice of life issue, or what have you, and what does that say about us?
I agree. And, one thing that I try to do and focus on, and part of my book and part of my speech, is my mother.
Mm-hmm.
I write extensively about her in the book. And I use that as like a fulcrum where what can we all relate to, right?
Mm-hmm.
Great mom. And I have friends who read it, and people, they say, my mom was an Italian woman, Italian American, but she gets claimed by every race and ethnic group and religion. Jewish people are like, oh, is she Jewish? Oh, is she Dominican? Is she this? And that just shows you people that conservative, liberal, they all claim my mom. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because that kind of transcends everything. And the love of the child, me. And then after she passes, and the love of the community that supported me and kept me from crawling into a bottle or crawling into a crack house, right? And nobody stopped and said, "Oh, are you liberal? Are you a libtard? Oh, you watch, They said, "Here's a person who needs help. Let's go." And you know, and it was beautiful. And we can do that all day, every day. And it doesn't make you a communist. It doesn't make you this. Doesn't make you and it just talks about, it's about love.
Mm-hmm.
And too much in the last 40, 50 years, we've had communities that have broken apart. People don't feel that love anymore. If the factory closed down, town's dead.
Yeah.
Now, where do you go? You got to flee somewhere. Where I live in a wealthy area. We actually had to move because one time we lived, it was just like too cutthroat. It wasn't a community. It was like a Thunderdome where, oh, you're not a millionaire. Oh, no. Oh, I can't talk to you. And then, oh, you're a millionaire. You're not a deca millionaire. Oh, we got to go hang with the sentiment. it was just completely preposterous, and it's not a community. It became a corporation, and it was about, instead of just saying, hey, great, you're my neighbor. You got kids, we have the same value. Let's try to raise our kids together and let's try to have a nice life together. It was constant competition, constant trying to one up. And that's just not a healthy way to live.
No, I mean, there's nothing wrong with healthy competition. I mean, we're back to capitalism and economics and again, um, but yeah, when that becomes the central focus and it takes away from helping your neighbor, I mean, where does that put you? I mean, that's definitely not Friedman, not Adam Smith, not any of the economic greats who might have supported the idea of capitalism or did support the idea of capitalism. But it's like, yeah, what do we do? I mean, I know my solution, my day job, I'm a leadership development coach in addition to other things. I can't focus on one thing at a time, but I teach ethical leadership, and where the main concern is where the main focus is to be concerned with the needs of all the stakeholders, whether they're your employees or followers, your shareholders, the community in general, what have you, and it can be difficult to do because there's so many people to think about, but and of course sometimes people want to prioritize and say, well, these people's needs are more important than those people's needs, but you have to take them all into account.
Well, you had Jack Welch, who was the opposite of everything you just said. GM and Jack, and we're going to fire the bottom 20%, no matter what. Well, they still were good employees. Well, they're bottom 20%. They're out.
Nope.
And that's just, and it's just about the bottom line. And GM stopped making things, and they just started making up things with the financialization, and and that became the hallmark. And he was revered, and most people would say he's one of the greatest businessmen of all time. But it depends on your model of what is great.
Right.
And in one sense, yes, the profits went up. In another sense, a lot of that kind of was the road to where we are now,
Yeah.
where people don't trust. They don't trust the government. They don't trust businesses. They don't trust politicians, and we're reaping what we sowed.
Yeah, for sure. And now we're all going to end up in 2056 and living in the genetic opera. But let's see if I can remember the full name of the book. How to Defeat Hitler, Stalin, and the South. Wait a minute. Oh, why can I never get the Parkway right? Oh, I got Parkway right. Say the name of the book again.
Okay. It's How to Beat Stalin, Hitler, and the Southern State Parkway.
Southern State Parkway. Stalin, Hitler, Southern State Parkway. We don't have parkways out here. We have freeways.
Yeah, absolutely. And then whether you're on the parkway or freeway, it's somehow jammed with traffic 24/7.
Yes, we have parking lots.
And I can guarantee you on the 405 here, we're fighting Hitler and Stalin every day.
There you go.
Yeah, that's the truth. Yep. But and then of course we've got Repo the Genetic Opera and the Second Age of Aquarius for Darren. Want to make sure to promote what you guys are doing. And
thanks.
Steve's also a motivational coach, so you can find him. Where can they find you, Steve?
I'm on YouTube. I got a YouTube channel. I got some TikTok going now, which is very exciting. and Facebook and Instagram. You can all the usual spots.
All the usual spots. Yep. And then Darren, where can they find you?
You can find me on darrengordonsmith.com on my website. You can find information, and I hope you do, about the Second Age of Aquarius. It's the Second Age of Aquarius.com. And that film is available on most major streaming networks. So, want to check it out on Amazon or a bunch of other things, I would encourage everybody to watch it. And I actually did a soundtrack of 1960s music for the film. And if you go to secondageofaquarius.com, you can find information about how to get the soundtrack.
Cool. Yeah, great music in both movies, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's funny. This show actually started out as a musical interview show. I'd interview musicians and they'd play a little music and we'd just have a lot of fun, and then it kind of grew from there. So it's good to have a musician back.
Good.
But
I'm musical too. I sing solo. Solo, nobody can hear me.
see, I sing tenor, 10 or 12 miles
So-
away. That's where I sound good. No. Yeah, my father used to say that he could play the radio or the record player back in the day.
Yeah.
Wear the grooves out. But
And I'll end the bad jokes with I've got a great face for radio. Okay. Cool.
not anymore. Now it's a good face for podcasting.
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, nobody's on the radio. Goodness gracious. What else can we talk about? This has been interesting. This is definitely the most economics and politics I think I've talked on the show for a while. But well, let's see. We have been going
The other
for a
thing
while.
that I've been doing with my life, you
Oh,
guys
yeah.
can, is I'm a teacher and a coach as well.
Right.
And it was sports that really saved my life growing up, because after my mom told me the story about my babcha and her
Mhm.
amazing life. How the hell do I do anything? How do I make something myself? And my mom got me to go out for the football team,
Okay.
and I didn't know how to play football. I was the worst kid on the team, but the coaches and the other players became a family. And the motto of the team was "Brothers Forever," and it wasn't just something fun you put on a T-shirt, and they meant it. And the first time I got to practice, we had to run the warm-up lap, maybe about half mile, but as a fat kid, I might as win the Boston Marathon. And I'm dry heaving and choking, and Twinkies are falling out of my pocket. And the captain of the team comes and grabs me and pulls me across the line. Runs it with me, and goes, "Don't quit. We're going to get through this together." And it was just one of the first times where somebody really, besides my mom, gave a damn.
Wow.
And the coaches, I thought they were going to cut me. They called me into the office. I'm like, "Okay, you're going to cut me." They said, "No, you're on the team. We don't cut anybody." They said, "Keep trying. We're going to get through this, and it's going to turn around." And those men, saved my life. And also got help in the classroom. My mom got me a special ed teacher, Mrs. Dudick, and she taught me how to learn. And that's the other big part of the book is you need people like this in your community to help turn lives around. And by the end of high school, I got a scholarship to play football. I did well in school. Turned my life around thanks to the community, thanks to people giving a damn when they didn't have to. Um, and that's my answer to what we need here is not more politics, not more Fox News versus CNN and all this stuff. It's and some of those people who helped me, they might have been Republican, they might have been who the hell knew and who cared back then, right? They were just good people. Um, and that's what really hurt me now was some of the friends and family and helpers back then. Fast forward to 2020 in the pandemic, they're killing each other on social media. And I'm like, you guys are heroes. You all have the same values. Why are you fighting each other or fighting with me? And I'm like, we all used to love each other. And, that's the other part of the book. The other side is my sister, um, who, when she went out for sports, she got cut. There were cut teams, and she didn't have that football family experience or the sports family experience. And she got into drugs and alcohol and never got her life together. And she wound up drinking herself to death by the time she was 35. And the point of that is we got to get kids into the right where they can thrive. It doesn't have to be a sport. Not everybody's built for football, and that my daughter, she's on the theater and watch the same thing. But and you do movies, and music. The same thing. You have people, diverse talents and skills coming together to create something beautiful, something they couldn't do on their own. Like this show we're doing right now. We have three people, different walks of life, different parts, making something great. We're creating a short-lived but very nice little community here. Why not do that all the time? The robotics teams, and then we also have to worry about us. Like, I guess we're all roughly the same age, right? 40s. Guys in our demographic are at high risk of suicide. Because, you know, even if we had a good experience in school, well, what do we do as men? And you have problems. Like, suck it up, buttercup. You got problems, you know, have a beer, have a joint, where do we go? It's not everybody feels that community. You kind of feel isolated and alone. And I had a friend, a beautiful man, just killed himself a couple months ago because he didn't see the value anymore. He was just paying bills. He didn't feel like he had a life. And that's kind of what I'm trying to do is try to find ways to plug people in to make them feel valued, make them feel part of something special, whether it's a kid or an adult, and just trying to give them hope for a better tomorrow and let them know that they're loved.
So much of our collective focus seems to be on keeping up with the Joneses, and I think that's what creates a lot of the bill paying problem. Is that we live at the edge or even beyond our means, and it's like, and so you got to work 12-hour shift to keep the money coming in, enough money to come in to have that Mercedes and the $1 million house, and just to be able to keep up appearances. Okay. Didn't mean that to stop the conversation.
Great.
But yeah, we all want to. I mean, we all want to be more than what we are, and we just got to decide where that's going to lead us. Whether that's going to lead us to the Millionaires Club, the Deca Millionaire Club, or however many dollar signs there are, however many zeros there are on the check, or whether that leads us to being better people, being part of that community of others, and where we help each other, reach out a hand instead of bringing up the rope, reaching out a hand to help people up. What's important? What's gonna make us remembered?
again, I think, that's just, we want to be, we're kind of like herd animals, we're pack animals, right? Human beings want to be a part of a group, and you can wind up in different parts. You could start joining some of these extremist groups, like some of these folks who turn into school shooters, or some other, it's because they don't feel like they belong, or they join some of these extreme, because that gives them that sense of belonging, and so you could, run a theater group, or, coach a sports team, or, whatever the activity is, or you could go and do something violent, right? You could be, Mother Teresa or Osama bin Laden were both kind of looking for a sense of purpose.
Right.
They just kind of directions.
What's your purpose?
And your why.
I like that. Well, we're about to an hour and a half, and I think this conversation has been quite exhausting, uh, in a good way. But so I will ask: do you fine gentlemen have anything else to say to the nice people?
I just I'm just encourage everybody to watch The Second Age of Aquarius, since that's my newest movie that's out.
Yes.
But I do think I feel heartened by this conversation. I do like the idea of teams and people reaching out and not bringing people together through hate or hate of other people or tribalism, but really trying to bring all of us up. And so, I really do appreciate the time that we spent together talking about that.
Absolutely.
It was a great opportunity to chat. You guys are fantastic. I hope we can stay in touch. And I hope, Darren, you can turn my book into a movie. Would that be you could do? That'd be fun.
I'm definitely going to read it, so I'll check it out.
We'll get the screenplay. Wonderful, you guys.
That it's available on Amazon or
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, to Amazon, Google Steve Borys, Borys, or Stalin, Hitler, and Southern State Parkway, and you could be reading it on Kindle within moments.
Yeah. Okay.
Awesome. Okay, now there's one last question I ask of all of my guests, and so I want you to consider a hot dog in a bun. Is it a sandwich?
Steve, you want to go first, or?
Hot dog in a bun is delicious, and whether or not it's a sandwich, who cares? We're too busy eating.
We'll put that on the back burner, along with whether or not transgendered prisoners should have sex change operations.
As the 300-pound bald guy, I'm not worrying about those details. We're just eating the hot dog.
Yeah, but we'll discuss sex and hot dogs on another time.
There's an idea for a movie: sex and hot dogs.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you both for being on the show. I appreciate your time, and now I'm going to run the closing credits, and so you can all go away now.
Okay.
Good. Bye.
Good night.
Good night.
I'd like to thank everybody for tuning in. I'd like to tell you this has been a presentation of Bald Spot Productions. I'd like to thank my producer, my dear mother, Eileen Hatch. I, of course, am your humble host. And I'd like to thank my special guests, Darren Gordon-Smith and Steve Borys. They were great. Support the show if you feel so led over on Patreon. That's Bald Spots Pro. Pardon me. And don't miss YWL Online. We have new shows on Tuesdays and Saturdays. You can find us on Facebook and wherever fine podcasts are served. Tune in next time for my guest. Went too fast and I missed the name. Okay, there we're back to YWL Online. Dorothy Husson and Dr. George and Vanessa Nom. So we're going to get a threefer. Please be sure to like, comment, share, follow, whatever you got to do to stay informed on whatever platform you happen to be participating in the show with. And that's about it. So thanks again, everybody. And have yourself a wonderful whenever. Bye.